Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jackie Clark, and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I am super excited to have a wonderful guest all the way from America, which is so cool. So, can you please introduce who you are and tell everyone where in America you are?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, my love. I am Jemarc Axinto. I'm a trauma educator, coach, and wellness consultant. I've spoken at Harvard, multiple med schools. I've also trained physicians and mental health professionals across the spectrum, which has been so good for my imposter syndrome. I'm also non-binary, neurospicy, Filipinx, and I'm just my goal in the world is to help it by helping people heal their trauma. I profoundly believe that so many of the issues that we're dealing with comes from intergenerational epigenetic trauma that has never been dealt with and never healed, and that it falls on the people alive today who have educated themselves on mental health. It is our radical responsibility to actually do the work necessary so that we don't keep continuing these cycles of destruction and self-destruction. So I'm so happy to be here. Oh, and I'm
Me
in
too.
Philadelphia.
Of course, we did
Yeah.
say, where are you in the world?
Where
In
are you? Yeah.
Philadelphia.
Where am I don't know. I'm just vibing. We're on the float and rock hurling through space, honey. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so incredible to have you here. It's so wonderful to obviously go through this process. With the platform, we are always looking to have these conversations because I massively believe that the more that we talk about different angles of trauma, the more that we talk about individual experiences, the more the collective can actually identify and see what needs to be done and how we need to move. So I think that it's really, really powerful to actually have people who are willing to stand up and say, actually, this was my experience. This is how I dealt with it. This is what I went through. And for other people to be able to identify and not feel so alone, because I feel like there is still a lot of, even though we live in a world of social media and apparent connection, there is still a lot of separation and a lot of people feeling very isolated in the worlds that they live in. So I think that it's always so incredible when we can have these conversations. So again, like thank you so much for giving us your time and coming to have this conversation. We're always so grateful. And as always, the people who listen to the podcast know we always go back to like the starting. So like what is the healing moment for you? Like what is the thing that led to the moment where you were like, this is enough. Something has to change. Something's got to give. Like, I'm done now. Like, what was that moment for you?
Yeah, I mean, there were multiple moments, right? But if we're talking about my real, like, get your shit together moment, my come to Jesus moment for the Christians out there, right? Um, so I've been with my spouse now almost a decade this August, married for 7 years this June. And a year after we got married, I was not okay. My grandfather had just passed away, and there's this thing that happens when somebody passes, that you had a deep connection with at a certain time in your life, and it awakens and refires those neural pathways. And so I was close to my grandfather during childhood, which is, of course, there was a lot of trauma there. And I want to be so clear, the trauma wasn't like I was beaten or anything like that, but the trauma of growing up in a community and a culture that wasn't necessarily emotionally intelligent and emotionally mature. There can be a lot of disconnect there with all the well-meaning, but lacking the necessary tools that we're aware of today. So there's a lot of nuance here. But I was brought back to my childhood, and psychologically I was spinning out. And I remember 3 months after he passed away, my spouse and I were eating at this restaurant, and then I suddenly got very sharp with them and very defensive and very like over something innocuous. And they're like, "What's wrong with you?" And it's like, "Oh, I am suicidal right now. That's what's happening." And we were out because they're a med student. They had just taken a major exam and passed, and so they were drinking to celebrate. And we have a chinchilla who we let out to play for an hour every evening. And we went back to our house, And I was like, I'm just having this big existential realization. I really need you to like help take care of the animals. And they're like, I'm drunk, I can't. And I had been my partner's caregiver for the first 5 years of our relationship because about a year into us dating, they started experiencing seizures. And we were like, what's going on? What's happening? And it turned out that they were rooted in unhealed CPTSD and PTSD. And luckily, naming it helped the seizures stop. But then they developed fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain condition, chronic fatigue syndrome. So, and POTS. So there would be weeks at a time where they couldn't physically get out of bed. We had a wheelchair, a walker, a bedside commode. Like there'd be times where I'd have to literally like wipe them, clean them, all that stuff. And we were in our early 20s. So it was like a whole situation. And so for me to realize like, oh, I'm suicidal, it was one of those times where like you finally choose yourself in a way, but it's not done healthily, it's done very reactively. And it was very unreasonable for me to demand my spouse take care of our tiny rodent while drunk because that could cause harm. And I lost it. And then I remember I came back in the room, and fortunately, during that time period, we had developed some form of communication in times of crises. So I walked into the room and I was like, and I just saw them kind of sitting and staring into space. And contextually, at this point, they'd actually recovered from all their conditions. So they no longer had fibromyalgia. They no longer had CPTSD. They had gone from being very emotionally unintelligent, only being able to be like, there's happy, there's sad, there's angry, there's that's it. Having a full spectrum of emotional experiences, to being physically able, like from being barely ambulatory to going on hikes every day and doing yoga every day and like all these things, like miraculously. And I came into the room and I was like, what's going on? They're like, I just looked up how to get a divorce. And I was like, oh, what can I do to support you? And they said, I don't know, I feel numb. And that was the real shift for me because to witness somebody going from the amount of trauma of having chronic conditions, knowing their PTSD history, knowing their CPTSD history, go from that to being this thriving, vibrant person that I always saw the moment we fell in love with each other, to being numb as a direct consequence of my behaviors, as a direct consequence of how I was showing up in the world. I was like, oh, I am actively hurting this person that I deeply care about. And so when that happened, the facade dropped, the ego clinging dropped, the need to cling to this idea that I was inherently broken or that I was undeserving of love dropped because as long as I clung to that belief system, I would continue hurting the person most precious to me and actually also hurting so many other people. Around the same time this happened, I was in a fight with my best friend for a year while we were running a production company. I was completely isolated and alienating myself from everybody in my life. And so the first thing I did was I called my parents, who were stationed in Japan at the time. And I was like, I love you both, but every time I talk to you, I feel like I'm three. And like I have to do so much to try to prove that I'm worthy of your love. And I know that you don't get it. And I've been needing to have this conversation with you for years, but I didn't want it to come from a space of resentment or hate. But until I heal this psychological neural pathways in my brain, I can't talk to you because the neural pathways in your brain get reinforced the more you engage with stimuli. And so, like, yeah, sure, they weren't actively traumatizing me at that moment, but my brain still associated parents, danger. And then my parents being ever present in my life as someone who could just reach out, even though, like, intellectually I knew they were checking in because they cared, my brain and my nervous system associated it with, like, oh, now I have to, like, prove that I'm okay. I have to prove that everything's all right. I have to prove I'm capable because they're never going to think I'm capable. Like, all these narratives that just kept fueling and fueling and fueling this deep seated insecurity, and I was running away from my insecurity into being a caregiver. Like that was the thing that proved that I was enough. And then my partner got better. And I was like, oh, well, now there's nothing for me to prove that I'm enough with. And so, yeah, that was the radical shift. This was back in 20, the top of 2019 was when it went from, and at this point, I've been in trauma work for over a decade now. So I started my trauma journey after getting out of an abusive relationship post college. But much like a lot of people, it was a very intellectual journey. It was very like, oh, I will go to therapy and that'll be the only time I do it is once a week in therapy. And then it was like, oh, I'll read the books. Oh, I'll follow all these people on social media. But it was very heady. It was very like performative. It was very like, oh, I can say all the things and I can do all the therapy talk but it was very holier than thou, like, oh, I'm better than you because I'm doing the work, because now this is the thing that proves that I'm enough. And there's real power in being able to sit with your bullshit. There's real power in being able to be like, oh, I don't know if you've ever seen that show Key and Peele, but there's this really great skit where it's called Office Homophobe, where Keegan Michael Key plays like this very flamboyantly gay character, and they have like a penis straw, and they're being very inappropriate with their coworker, and they're like, "Hey, can I show you a picture? You let me know if it's good for Instagram." And the guy's like, "Oh, it's your butthole," and he's like, "Well, you're just a homophobe." Turns out Jordan Peele's character is gay the whole time, and the very last line is like, "Oh, I'm not being oppressed. I'm just an asshole." And that was really it. It was like, oh, I'm not perpetually the victim. I'm just an asshole. Like I had to really confront that, like in my defensiveness, in my victimhood mentality, that I was perpetuating the same systems that had harmed me. And so I had to really take account for that. And I had to really shift from this very westernized punitive mindset and self-punitive mindset into a radical, like transformative mindset. What does it look like to actually forgive myself and others? And not from the Catholic, like, forgive your uncle even though he harmed you so he can come to Thanksgiving dinner, but the very real, like, I need to forgive because all of this pain is living rent free in my mind. And all of this pain is associated with people who are at this point, the people that are in my mind are shadows and doppelganger versions of the actual people that harmed me. And so that shift is then what started. And the whole plan was just to heal, which I thankfully did. I no longer have that CPTSD, which is wonderful. And I no longer have an anxiety disorder, depression disorder, type 2 bipolar disorder, because it was all secondary conditions to unhealed CPTSD, which was amazing. And also, it's an ongoing journey. Like, the more I heal, the more my brain's like, now you're ready to deal with this. And sometimes I'm low key afraid that, like, some real dark thing will turn up, like in Inside Out 2. But so far, things are fine. And we seem to be good. And we're on a journey. And yeah. So I hope that all made sense. I also have ADHD. So I hope that had clarity and was in a good linear fashion for the most part.
It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. There's so many good things. There's so many things that we can obviously discuss in more detail as we kind of get into this episode more. But I think that like the idea of being able to call yourself out and being like, actually, I'm just being the asshole and I have to take responsibility. I think I always say that like the only way that you heal is by taking radical responsibility for everything and pulling everything back into your power. Because the moment you give your power to somebody else is the moment that you can no longer heal from the thing because you're waiting for somebody else to do it for you. So I think like that is like a massive message we talk about all the time on the podcast because I think people really need to hear that. Like it's such an important thing. But I love that idea of like you actually being able to sit down and be like, oh yeah, no, I'm being the asshole in this moment. Like I am doing the same thing that all of these shadows have done to me. I am, showing up in the same way. And I think for so many people, it's really hard to actually accept that and actually sit down and say, oh, yeah, actually, I'm doing what I hated being done to me, like I'm doing to other people, or I'm doing to myself, which is probably even worse. And
Yeah.
being able to actually like realize and have that realization and then do something with that. And I always ask people, like, what did you have to embrace about yourself or like get to know about yourself in order to come to this realization? And I think like the asshole thing is a really big part of this. But was there anything else that like really stood out where you had to be like, oh, wow, this is not good about me. And actually, I need to do something with this?
1,000%. And it relates to do you know who Paulo Freire is? Yeah, so Paulo Freire has this really great concept. It's called the pedagogy of the oppressed, and it argues that lack of liberating education, lack of decolonized education, to put it in a more modern language, can lead oppressed individuals to want to emulate their oppressors, perpetuate the cycle of oppression. And this is very relevant because, again, my big come to Jesus moment was in 2019. And then I had another moment in 2020, which was at the very tail end of Trump's first administration. And in America, we had a terrorist attack happen where this white man shot up a bunch of Chinese nail salons. I'm not sure if y'all heard about it in South Africa. Um, it was painted not as a terrorist attack, but like it was a terrorist attack, right? And I'm Asian. And so I remember in 2020, I was sitting in my office in my previous home, and these words came out of my mouth. And for context, my spouse is white, which is important for this story. And I said, I want to lock up all of these white people in cages so they know what this feels like, but not Ezra, they're one of the good ones. And that was my holy shit moment because I was utilizing the exact same language that had been used on me throughout my life. That was like, J-Mark, you're not like other Asians. Like, you're like a cool Asian. You're one of the good, you know what I mean? And so at that moment, that saying, like, absolute power corrupts absolutely, there's a real shift for me. It was like, no, absolute power magnifies. And if you have trauma, it magnifies your trauma. And at that moment, I couldn't say with 100% certainty that if I had power, that I wouldn't have started like being a little dictator. And so I realized like, wow, it takes a lot of privilege to say, oh, but like I've been hurt, but I've never done that before. Like I wouldn't lock people up. It's like, honey, you've never had the power to do that. It's so easy to say you wouldn't do the thing when you don't have the power to do the thing. And I had to really be like, oh, I'm literally psychologically becoming the same as my oppressors. And that was my real, like, okay, yes, I'm doing individual healing, but now within the social economic context, I also have to recognize the ways that I'm not healing there. And there's a term I coined for it. I call it reactivism. So it's this idea that people don't get into activist work or social change work because life is easy and splendid for them. Like it's usually something like they're like, oh, what would be great if my life became harder? No, you're fueled by some deep harbored pain for yourself, for your community, for your culture. And that's a reaction to get into the work. And that's actually a good thing. Like you want people to be awakened to their compassion. But a lot of people it then gets fueled with either childhood trauma and like the need to be like, no one showed up for me as a kid, so now I'm going to show up for everyone. I'm going to burn myself out. I'm going to model my parents' martyrdom and not even realize I'm modeling it. And then you're a reactivist and you're perpetuating the same systems that you're trying to break down. There's a lot of infighting, there's a lot of shutdown, there's a lot of difficulty. And that was moi. I was that problematic girly. And so when that happened, I was like, oh, first off, I need to step away from my activist work because clearly it's not the look. Secondly, when the time comes, I need to completely reframe how I engage with this work of showing up for community, of showing up for people. And so then at that moment, I was already starting to dip my toe into spirituality. I was starting to become a very devout Buddhist. And from there, I started looking into the work of like Ram Dass and not Deepak Chopra, Ram Dass and Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Audre Lorde and Bayard Rustin and all of these people who engaged in social change from this space of decolonization, from the space of not perpetuating violence, and realizing, like, oh, my concept of what it means to help others has been so conditioned through the lens of colonization and capitalism. There actually is a way to engage in change to hold people to account without reducing people to labels, without reducing people to their trauma, to be able, and also without being dismissive of it. So not spiritually bypassing very real oppression that is rooted in whiteness, that is rooted in all these things, but still being able to be like, yes, there can be kindness, there can be joy, there can be a path forward that acknowledges our differences, celebrates our differences, but no longer allows them to hold us back from deep connection. So I hope that was okay. I know we said like nothing political, but this was like a contextual thing. So I hope that was okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I think like there's so much of that across the whole world at the moment with so many countries questioning what they've been told, so many places questioning their education systems. Like I'm always so blown away when I talk to people about the education system that is, the norm across the world, and actually like asking people if they know where the education system came from and how it was developed. And like my background is in learning and development and teaching, and like it just blows my mind that people actually don't realize that education came from this place of creating factory workers, and we're
Yeah.
still
Oh my God,
doing
I
that.
love you. No one ever knows that. No one, you are the
Yeah.
first I've been on so many podcast interviews and so many things. You are the first person who said that first. Yes. It was
Yeah.
literally created to condition us, like when education was made available from the bourgeoisie to everyone else. Like there's a reason why private schools and like stuff like that, people are coming out knowing how to like invest and do their taxes and do all these things. Whereas people come out of public school and they're like, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Like, honey, yes. I love you already. Yes. Yes. I this is I would
So
never
important though.
yeah, I would never die on a hill, but I will kill on a hill. Someone will die on that hill, honey, and it will not be me, and that is one of those hills. Like, yes.
Yeah. 100%. Because like it is this thing when you look at like the biggest challenge that we face in moving the collective forward is the fact that we are educating people in the wrong way, that we are
Yes.
keeping people stuck in the wrong like time frame, and we're trying to bring people through an education system that doesn't prepare them for the world that they now live in. It doesn't prepare them for what they're up against and how they're supposed to work. And then everyone's all confused as to why things don't work and, why people aren't happy and why we have all of this collective trauma and why, people are
Yeah.
so depressed. And like, there's all of these things where you look at it and once you've gone through this and you've gone through a level of healing and you have taken that responsibility for yourself and you've educated yourself on like a wider spectrum and kind of similar, like I went down and like did my yoga teacher training and like did all the India training and like all of that sort of stuff, like for the same reason of like wanting to understand all of this to like a deeper level. And you look at it and you go, it's really sad, actually, the amount of separation, the amount of like ancestral. I mean, coming from South Africa, obviously, we had apartheid. Like we played the ancestral game real hard. We
Yeah.
played the race game real hard. Like,
Mhm.
and it's so interesting to see again like how that context like sits differently to other countries. Like in South Africa, I'm a minority group, whereas in most of the world, like in a lot of other places that I've lived, I've been in the majority group. But living back in South Africa, like there's so many nuances in all of these things of the cultural layers of healing trauma, the familial like paths of healing trauma, the generational, like there's so many different parts of this, which I think is it's really, really interesting actually when you start diving into it in more detail. And I guess like I always want to ask people when you were going through this, so like you've gone through two big like crisis moments, like two big things. Was there ever any moments where you were literally like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I don't think I can heal. I know you said like you're always a little bit worried that like the next thing that comes is just gonna be too big. I get that feeling. Or like that moment where you're just like, can you stop now? Like, I think I've healed enough. Can you just stop throwing things at me? Like, do you ever have those moments of just being like, please stop?
Ah. So those are two separate things, right? The first one is so much of my journey early on through life was I don't think I can heal. Because I grew up in a
Mm.
culture that told me that therapy was just for people who were quote unquote crazy or violent or inherently broken. And so I had to like really advocate for myself to get therapy after getting out of my abusive relationship. I'd be like, because again, and again, this is also an issue, right? Of this like binary one or the other. In Filipino culture, it's very like your family's there, you have your family there, and then Western culture is like you just talk your stuff with your therapist. I'm like, we could have both. Like it doesn't just have to be one or the other. Like we could do like both can be fine. And so I had to really, but then for me, both wasn't really an option because I'm the only one in in my immediate family who's done therapy, and I'm the only one who's able to have these conversations and like do that stuff. And so yeah, both was an option for me in immediate family, but in chosen family, like yeah, we have difficult conversations. I literally just had a conflict with a friend. It was our first ever conflict after knowing each other for a couple of years, and I was like, I'm really glad this happened. They're like, what do you mean? It's like because and they're also a therapist. So it's like, I'm really glad this happened because we are able to communicate through this. For me, this shows the resiliency of our relationship. I would much rather us have conflict and be able to communicate and work through it than that. So yeah, I had so many moments where I was like, oh, I'm just fucked up. Like there's no healing for me. It was that belief that like this is just my personality, this is just how I am. And then I've learned over the years through my work and trauma that like, oh no. I had these states of being, these personality states that I needed while in a survival mode growing up that then became personality traits. But thanks to the wonders of neuroplasticity, it's actually possible to shift that. It's very difficult, but it is possible to shift that. And then as I started the journey, when you really start doing deep, deep trauma healing work, I'm talking like neural rewiring work, your brain will fight you on it because your brain likes sameness and your brain likes things to be consistent. And so what will happen when you're really like rewiring your brain and trying to normalize a state of dose, which is dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, your brain will either intensify symptoms. So there'd be periods where like I would suddenly have really intense flashbacks or like my weight would fluctuate wildly or I would break out or it'll send you symptoms. Like there was a period where I had canker sores in my mouth for like 2 months straight and like multitudes of them and it was really difficult to eat. And I had to really tell myself that I had to keep doing the because your brain will try to send you these signals that tell you that the thing you're doing that's good for you is bad and you will want to stop, but you have to stay with it. So that's the first part of it. The second part question of please stop is all the goddamn time. I I it just it just feels like I've done so much healing and I'm so proud of that. And I'm always reminding myself that had I not that healing, I wouldn't be resilient as I am now in current America as a queer, brown, neurodivergent person, just casually occupying all those identities that are being actively oppressed. And I keep reminding myself that, like, had I not done that work, I wouldn't be able to be grateful today, which for a lot of BIPOC people or queer people or neurodivergent people can be a very triggering statement. But I mean that truly, like, holy fuck, I'm alive. I'm housed. I have food. I have a beautiful partner. We have a zoo of babies because we're millennials and heaven forbid we have human babies. And then we have this beautiful yard. Like finding whimsy and simplicity has been the greatest gift I could possibly ask for. And then also being able to be unapologetically myself. Like for me, cringe doesn't exist. Like if somebody comes up to me and they're like, "Yeah, I like underwater basket weaving in the nude," I'll be like, "You go, Glen Coco. Like you do. I don't give a fuck. Like I play D&D on the reg, honey. Like I got no room to judge anybody. If someone's a furry, like yeah, dope as hell. You bet. Like if they're a sexual furry, because I know there are different kinds. I guess I'm not in the culture, but like yeah, you bang people in the furry costume. I don't give a fuck. Like you do you. If you're as long as you're not actively harming people, I don't give a shit. Like and that's such a liberating feeling to drop the performative puritanical, not religious puritanical, sometimes religious, but like the performative purity culture and just be like, yeah, we're just my new phrase I've been using, and you heard me say it I think before we started recording, where I'm just like, yo, we're on a floating rock. Like it's been such a great way of just letting go of things that aren't that deep and orient myself towards things that matter. And again, like yeah, all the damn time. It'd be nice to be, because are you a millennial as well? Are we around the same age? Yeah, we've dealt with crises basically all the time, and it'd be nice. It'd be it and like unlike Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like we were born with hope and then things happened. Like literally born with hope and then Y2K and then 9/11 immediately after and then a bunch of other stuff. And I only say 9/11 even though I'm America because it had such an impact on global politics, right? So like again, I was like, yeah, it'd be nice if like the curriculum could slow down. Could I get a solid like decade where it's not just like where the most crisis I have to deal with is like, oh, I can't get a Nintendo Switch 2. Like that's a personal crisis I'm dealing with because I'm a huge geek and I couldn't get a pre-order in on time. Like I can handle that. That's fine. Can it not be existential nihilistic dread? Like that would be fabulous. So we're getting a little esoteric. It's not can it stop because of my inner world? It's can it stop because I'm doing all this inner world work and the universe is like, great, you're ready for all this external work. And I'm like, honey, can I just enjoy? Like I came part of my healing journey is I finally realized I was queer and all my friends laughed because they always knew and I was so deep in the closet I didn't know. So like I turned 33 in October. I came out at 28 as non-binary. No one was shocked. But like yeah, I finally like dress how I want to dress and I paint my nails and I look so hot because I'm no longer trying to be like hyper masculine and it was not a good like I sometimes can be in a little mask phase, but it's no longer fueled by this performativeness. It's very like, this is how I feel today. And I would love to just be that and not have to worry about the implications of what that would mean in the culture we live in. Like that'd be great. If I could just be queer in the woods somewhere and just be fabulous, that'd be legendary. So yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely I definitely feel this like so much as well. Yeah, I mean similar ages, similar life experiences in the what was going on in the kind of greater collective of the world as we were growing up. And I think there is definitely, I have that same feeling often where I'm like, can everything just slow down for a second? Can we just have like half a second to just not have to deal with like some big thing or like some big change or something that's happening? And I think it's such an interesting, like again, part of healing when you're looking at it and you're saying, like before, this wasn't even available to me because I wouldn't have been able to handle it. And actually now it's available to me because I've grown into this person, because I've taken the responsibility, because I've gone through this process, because very similarly, I am happy to just be myself now. I'm happy to say what I think. I'm happy to do what I want. I'm happy to let people just be themselves. And like the same thing, as long as nobody's hurting anyone, like off you go, do your thing. Like I don't really care. I think like there's so much empowerment in that place of I will take radical responsibility for myself and you can take radical responsibility for yourself and I won't judge you and you don't judge me and like we're all kind of happy days. And I do think like especially like living in South Africa, and I know like it's generational, but we do still have a number of people who are still very caught up in that apartheid like way of thinking. And it is like it's really, really sad. But like not even just that, there's also just like generational inherent racism. Like that
Mhm.
people don't even realize that there is racism. Like people don't even realize that that they're doing it. Or and like the thing that you said earlier where like people would be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, but you're not a crazy Asian." Like that happens here all the time where people are like, "Oh yeah, but that person's not a black like a bad black person." And you're just like, you can't say stuff like that. Like
Yeah,
actually,
the
like
microaggressions, the
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
massively. And like
and you know this as an educator, right? Language is powerful. The things like you can really get a gauge on a culture based on like the way they speak on certain topics. And again, I don't think they're bad people. I don't like reducing people to good people or bad people unless they're like really heinous. And even then I'm like, okay, trauma. But like yeah, it's an identity politic thing. It's not that they don't understand because they're innately cruel or mean, it's that they literally don't have a conceptual framework for why it's harmful. And because their identities are so wrapped up and that this inability to disidentify core consciousness, which I know you know as a yogi, core consciousness from skin, core consciousness from religion, core consciousness from belief systems, being able that's why sometimes when people ask me, "Who are you?" and the only reason why I gave a direct like these are my labels, is because But like usually I'm just like I'm an experience. Like that's it. Like I'm just an experience. I often tell people like I could wake up one day and realize I'm cishet and just wanted to give myself permission to dress and act the way I do with the non-binary label. I don't know. And I don't think that makes me any more or less queer. I think that actually really liberates me in a way that doesn't liberate a lot of people. So, absolutely.
yeah, 100%. I think like there's so much in that conformity of like the older generations and what was deemed appropriate. And actually, when you look at a lot of people who I speak to in the older generations when they come on the podcast and they're talking about their trauma, a lot of it is around this identity piece of not being able to display who they were or what they believed or how they felt or it wasn't deemed acceptable to be themselves when they were growing up or when they were, a young adult or like there was a very different like a very different culture. And I think a lot of people had that very like small culture as well, because obviously social media wasn't a very big thing. Like people, you couldn't connect with people who were the same as you from all around the world. It was very much like if you didn't fit into the tiny community that you lived in, you felt like you were like you didn't fit and you felt like you didn't have anywhere in the world that you could be. And I think like there is a lot of benefit in the connection that we have as a globe nowadays, but there's also a lot of trauma in that as well. There's also a lot of like perpetuating the drama because we have that much connection and ability to like reach people. So I think there's so much, like we could probably talk about this for literal days. Like there's so much here, which is incredible. But one of the biggest things I love asking people is like, what was your biggest outlook change? So from before you started healing to like the person you are now, like what was your biggest like aha, oh my gosh, the world doesn't work like that. Like the biggest thing that just like shifted for you.
Oh my goodness. That's a fabulous question. I think it's twofold. One, for the personal, is I am always enough. And I'm still working on embodying that. There are definitely moments where the imposter syndrome creeps in, the insecurity creeps in, where I might need like words of affirmation is I like to say love language I give, love language I receive. Like the love language I most need to receive is words of affirmation because it just didn't come naturally in my household growing up. Um, so yeah, knowing that I'm enough has been so big because then when you know that innately and when you embody that, you realize how much of your suffering is self-perpetuated from that point of not enoughness. And like, why was I always judging other people? Why was I always comparing? It's like, oh, because I needed to feel better about myself and feel like I was enough. So I was one of those people who would like sickeningly look on the internet for like Karens and like see them lose their shit and then comment like I would never do that. Like so like I was an exhausting bitch. Like I was just gonna say like so like for me exhausting. And then the second one is a Buddhist concept. Um and it's that all sentient beings, period, want two things in life. They want happiness and they want to be free of suffering. And all of our decisions are rooted in that. And then another Buddhist concept is the three poisons, which is attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So many of our behaviors are fueled by this attachment to happiness, oftentimes an imposed version of happiness, of like, I'll finally be happy when I get the job, I'll finally be happy when I get married, I'll finally be happy when I get the dream car, all these not solid things. And then the aversion of suffering is like, I don't want to be poor, I don't want to hurt, I don't want to deal with pain at all. I want to be very suffering avoidant. And like literally, you look at any YA book, and the villains are always people who are just like avoidant of suffering, right? So it's just like, okay, so maybe that's not it. And being able to realize that too allowed me to connect so deeply to the innate humanity of everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone from my neighbor across the street to Elon Musk, right? Now, it doesn't excuse behavior. And I think oftentimes people think that me saying things like, oh, yeah, no, I pray for these people who are causing harm and I want them to be happy. I want them to be free of suffering. And they're like, what do you mean you want them to be happy? I'm like, honey, happy people don't destroy a government. Like it's just not a thing that happens. Like happy people don't build penis rockets and send Katy Perry to space. Like that's like happy like that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So like yeah, I want them to be happy and free of suffering because then they will actually use these gifts that they've been bestowed by the universe to make the world a better place. Happy people don't feel like they have to cling to power because they know they're innately powerful. Happy people don't have to oppress others because they know that they are the same, you know? So like those are the two shifts for me. And again, it's a practice. At the opening, I said, hello, my love. That's an entirely like self-serving thing. I call everyone my love as a Buddhist practice to be like, I need to fucking remember that you and I are both love. It's not like a superficial, like, hello, my love, look at me, I'm so gay. It's very much like, hello, my love. Yes, J Mark, remember, everyone is love. Hold on to that, especially now. You need to hold on to that. And yeah.
I love that. I literally love that. It's so good. But I mean it is like it's so true though, because I have that same kind of feeling of, it's never my place to judge what somebody else is doing or, the decisions that they're making because I'm not walking their path and I don't know what they've gone through and I don't know what they need to do in order to get to the point where they have their healing moment and they they break and maybe they're not supposed to do it in this lifetime. Maybe it's another lifetime. Maybe they're here to just cause drama for all of us to do our healing work. Like, there's no right or wrong path. Like, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. There's no
Mhm.
distinction of everyone has to go through the same cycle and get to the same place and like have the same outlook. And the more that we can just let go of that need for everyone to conform and to be the same and to think the same, and like, I'm also neurodivergent, and I literally teach people how to do business neurodivergently, because most of what is created in the world is created for people who are not neurodivergent. And you look at all of this and you go, the moment that I can say to a female business owner, you don't have to do it like that. You can do it how you want and how works for you. And they're literally like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. I can run a business. And I'm like, I know. But it's like, they have to have somebody give them a permission, because nobody's ever done it before. And I think like that's always how I feel about this healing journey. It's like, I don't need to give you permission, but if I can be the catalyst that makes you feel like you have permission, so you go and do that thing and you like show up as yourself and you create what you're supposed to in the world, like I will absolutely be that person for you. Like, not because I feel like I have the power to give people my permission, but just because I know that everybody needs a soundboard, everybody needs like a springboard to start that journey. And I think like there's so much in that space of, especially with like the Buddhist teachings and the yogic scripts and all of that understanding of just like oneness, that
Mhm.
like there is only one. It doesn't matter who you are, what your background is, what your sexuality, your religion, like it doesn't matter what anything is. In essence, we are all actually the same thing. And I think
Yeah,
like
we're all
the
just
more
stardust.
we're all just
And
stardust, we're
and
all
like
just twinkly.
and
Like,
for all we know,
hello.
like we're a dream a baby's having. Like who the hell knows? Like for all there's a practice I do. It's gonna sound a little delulu to people who aren't in like the spiritual realm. But like sometimes I pretend I'm a sim, and I'm just in a video game and like the world is just computer generated. So like if I turn around, suddenly that will pop up because that's how fast I don't and I'm not using that as like a delulu, like it's not real anyway. So like fuck, like it's very much like what if I just treated it like a game, just a little bit, just enough for me to let go of the things that are hurting me. And
Yeah.
yeah, in Buddhism we have this concept called the middle way. And there's relative reality and ultimate reality or absolute reality. And absolute reality is what you're saying, the yogic, like everything is one, everything's unity, division's illusory. Relative reality though is like, yeah, these isms exist, racism exists, homophobia exists, sexism exists, I am me, you are you, I'm in Philadelphia, you're in South Africa. Like that's real also. And the middle way, I tell people to walk the middle way. You live absolute reality from the heart, but you engage with the world, relative reality from the mind and body. So like if I were to suddenly be confronted by a homophobic racist person on the street, relative reality Jamer's gonna be like, you don't get to talk to me like that, honey. Like get out of my face. I will protect myself. Absolute reality Jmark is like, girl, I hope you heal because it must be so exhausting. But I'm not gonna say that out loud. Like it's not and I think that's where sometimes, and I know you've run into this as well, being in a similar world, sometimes people overly lean into absolute reality to the point of spiritual bypassing. We're just like, everything is one and they just need love. I'm like, honey, they're literally putting people in cages. Like we can take accountability. Like, and whenever I hear people spiritually bypassing, I'm like, your trauma is just leading you down a new route of escapism. Like that's all that's happening. Like you used to be an alcoholic, you did AA, which is very Abrahamic centric, and now you're like, I love Jesus. You just switched addictions. Like, yeah, it's not alcohol, so it's not as stigmatized, but you went all in a way that feels like addictive behavior. Like we can find this balance. It's okay. It's okay to say we are all one and also harm should not continue happening. Like it is okay to live in a world where both truths can be simultaneous. And whenever I see people in that hyper binaryism, it's like, there's the trauma. There's the trauma having you choose either absolute relative or absolute ultimate. And it's like, middle way, honey. That's it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's such a power in that as well, because I speak to a lot of people obviously on the podcast who are talking about like how they healed. And I've had a number of people say to me, like, I just replaced the addiction. So I literally, as you just said, like went from being an alcoholic to being like a gym bro, or, went from taking drugs to being like an excessive, compulsive, like musician or dancer, or like, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the thing is. But I love that thing that you said about like, because it's not stigmatized, nobody
Yep.
bats an eyelid. Like, you go out and run, as an example, instead of going out and getting drunk, and people aren't going, "Oh, what trauma are you dealing with?" But as a runner, I can tell you that whole collective is traumatized. I can tell you that right now.
Facts. I
We
mean,
are running away from
literal flight. Literal
it.
flight, literally running away from your problem.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
I'm so glad in my journey I didn't pick up running as a coping mechanism because my knees could never. Like I used to be a dancer, that's the amount of time I'll spend, but like y'all go hard. You're like, "Oh yeah, I just did a 10K today." And I'm like, "Oh, was it a thing?" Like, "No, I did it for fun." Excuse me?
Yeah, we do that. We do that. But I think like
Bless.
it's that thing, isn't it? Of like how you approach these things is what's important. Like when
Yeah,
it becomes something that is, and I can absolutely say, like when I was coming out of depression, running became my replacement. Like it became the
absolutely.
way that I
And that's okay.
could
And that's
break the
okay.
hormones.
Yeah.
100%. And like now it's become a love. Like now it's become something that I really enjoy, which is different. But I think like there is that thing of like, you have to live in the reality that you're in. You have to live. It's all good and well to say, this is the absolute, and this is the oneness, and this is what we want it to be like.
Mhm.
But if you're living in that place, you're just gaslighting the reality that you're in at the moment, which I
Oh,
think
I
is
love
really,
that phrase. Yes, put that on a t-shirt, honey. That was amazing.
it's so important though, isn't it? Like we have to be able to take that into account. So, okay, my question then is, what is your advice for people? So when people are going through trauma, they're recognizing that something is triggering them, they're recognizing that something isn't right. Like, what's your advice as like, where do we start? How do we move? Like, what do we do?
Mm. Well, the first thing that comes up for me, hello, well, I'm just going to address them directly. Hello. Hello, dear listeners of this podcast. I hope you are all as much a fan of Jackie as I am. Obviously, this is a gorgeous, iconic being, and we love to see that. I'm going to say this gently, but also know that so many of my clients say that my vibe is I'll read you to filth with love. Um, you're going to fuck up, and that's okay. And you can't shame yourself in the healing. There is a voice inside you telling you that now that you've made the choice to heal, that you have to be a perfectionist. But honey, that's the same voice that kept you feeling like shit. So just know you're gonna fuck up. That's okay. Healing isn't linear, honey. It's a spiral staircase going upwards. So you're gonna feel like you're in the same space, but once you rewire those neural pathways, they're still there. So that's fine. That's the first thing. Second one, I mean, hit your girl up. Like, this is what I do for a living, honey. Like, I'm happy to serve and support you. But literally, ask yourself, especially if you're in therapy, ask yourself if therapy is still serving you. Because therapy is wonderful for context and shame reduction. But therapy as it exists now, and when I say it exists now, I mean as the common practice, not that all therapists are like this. If your therapist isn't like this, great. But therapy as it exists now is very past oriented, but you're living in the present. And if you are not receiving the tools necessary to deal with present day triggers, if you've been in therapy for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years and you're still having the same fucking conversation with your therapist that you're having day one, now it's time to shift. You know the context. It's like that thing where like therapists often say, when I say often, again, I'm speaking broadly, like, oh, you seem to be very aware of what's happening. I have nothing to help you with. And that can be true. Like, again, a lot of their role is shame reduction and harm reduction. And that's beautiful and wonderful. But if you're ready to take the next step, it's time to ask yourself, like, how do I rewire the triggers? Because guess what? If you no longer have the triggers, you no longer have the trauma. And that's really where the work gets juicy. Because suddenly you're not talking about your trauma story anymore. You're not talking about your trauma narrative. You're just like, I'm scared of red balloons. I need to become comfortable with red balloons now. Like, I don't give a shit that you watched it at way too impressionable an age. Like, that doesn't matter. Let's get you not afraid of red balloons and let's get you not afraid of clowns. And then guess what? If you're not afraid of red balloons and not afraid of clowns anymore, there's no trauma in your body for that thing. Like, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. Like, that's how you can really dig into the juicy work. And also, again, you're not going to be perfect because your brain's going to be actively fighting you every step of the way. But the beautiful thing is, and I'm going to use very geeky language here because I'm a huge fucking geek. Your body is a giant robot, your brain is the operating system, and you are the pilot. So, like, you can decide whether or not to engage when the operating system decides to go a little cuckoo, and that's okay.
I love that. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, like, again, for people to remember that, like, therapy in its construct that it lives in the world right now is mostly talk therapy. And
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with talking, like 100%, but our body is made up of neural pathways, and those neural pathways don't get better just by talking about something. They have to feel safe. So, actually, leaning into things like somatic work and body work and work that's actually going to start to rewire and move energy out of your body and give you space to actually create new neural pathways and do all of that actual true like nervous system work where you're actually getting into the crux of your nervous system is really powerful. But for a lot of people, they're not able to get to that point and believe that that stuff can work until they have,
Yes.
exactly like you said, reduced some of that shame, gotten a bit more context around actually what is it that I need to work on? What are these triggers? And, figuring out that it's the red balloons and that's what they need to work on. Like,
Mhm.
that like talk therapy can be so important for that sort of stuff, but there absolutely comes a time where we've got to go back into our body, we've got to go back into the vessel that's holding us and say, actually, what needs to happen now? How do we need to move? How do we need to like do something different? Because it's so interesting when people think that because they do something a certain way, it's the only way that they can do it. And people are very programmed into this, like, well, this is just how I am, and this is just how it's going to be. And that, like, helping people realize that their brain is so much more powerful in that, and their nervous system is so much more powerful, but not even just their brain, but their body as well. Because a lot of people don't, and again, like, this is recent research around the nervous system of actually, it's not the brain that fires first, it's the body.
Yes, it's the
So
body.
if the
Eastern
body
Eastern
fires
wisdom has been
first,
on that for forever.
oh, 100%. But in actual medical papers, in actual, like,
Very new. Yeah.
science papers, like now suddenly they're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, it's not the brain? Oh, we thought that was the most like intelligent part of our body. Like actually it's very reptilian, and it's
Mhm.
your body that
Yes.
actually is leading a lot of these emotional responses and a lot of these triggers and a lot of the trauma that's stored in our body. And it's all around exactly like how we feel and how we show up, rather than like we can't necessarily think or talk our way out of a situation because
No.
logic unfortunately just doesn't work like that. Like, it's just not possible. I think for so many people to actually realize that and realize, like, the logic says we have to get it right, but we're not going to. The logic says that, it should be one step in front of the other, but actually it's going to be a damn roller coaster and you're not going to know what the fuck's going on. And half the time you're going to be upside down and it's going to be fine anyway. Like, the more that we can just like accept that process as we heal, and the more that we can go through and be like, this is just what it is, the easier I think the journey gets, because you're no longer having this like pretense of what it should be and how you should feel and like what the expectation of a healed person is. And I love this. Like, I always say to people, like, I'm very healed. Like, I've done a lot of healing work and I still have days where I'm an absolute like head case.
Oh my
And
God. Yeah, I mean, let's
thank
normalize that,
you.
right? Like we have a cleaner come every other week to kind of help us out around the house because again, um supporting my partner, all that stuff, right? And I remember one day our cleaner left and I spilled litter box all over the rug, like literally right after he left. And I was like, that's okay, I can handle it. And that was fine. Not 48 hours later, after absorbing some of the news cycle, just like I don't engage with the news directly, but it just happens. I was washing the dishes. I sprayed water on myself and screamed. Like that was more upsetting to me than litter all over a freshly clean carpet. Like that's gonna happen. I think the only difference between someone on the healing path versus somebody not is the amount of grace you give yourself and also whether or not you give yourself the space to process the emotion so you can release it. I think a non quote unquote healing journey person would either shame or blame themselves for freaking out over water or not allow themselves to feel how upset they are. Because like there's this like if it's hysterical, it's historical. Like I was screaming because I was stressed out from the past 48 hours, not because of that one thing. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's I think these are the things that people need to hear. Like just
Mhm.
because somebody's gone on a healing journey, just because we work in this space, just because we look like we've got it together most of the time, that isn't actually like what it actually is. Like healing isn't a start here, end here, get to the place. Like it's much more just like a life journey.
You know what it is? We have it together because we know we don't have it together. That's all it is. Like that's the difference. So many of the people in the world who cause harm are have this facade of like, I have my shit together, I'm holier than thou. And we're like, no, I'm a fucking mess, honey, but like I'm comfortable with it, and that's fine. Again, we're just on a floating rock.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but
Like it's
like,
always going to be fine. Like I think as well, like the more that you take responsibility for things, the more that you realize how much you can actually sort out and how much you
yes.
can actually like I always trust that I will come out the other side. Like it will be fine, regardless of what the situation is, regardless of what's happening. Because I'm like, everything up until this point has shown me that I can walk through hard things. It's shown me that
Yeah.
I can get to the other side. It's shown me that I can, you know, move countries, deal with grief, deal with depression, deal with job loss. Like I can do all
You
of these things. And if I can, then the next thing that comes, why wouldn't I be able to deal with it? Like it's gonna be
Yeah,
fine.
it's the comfort of, and this goes to your audience as well. You have survived 100% of your worst days. That's a factual statement. Like, are you here? Are you alive? You've survived 100% of your worst days. Like, honey, you have evidence that shows that you're a fucking warrior. Like, I can say that, and for every single person I talk to, that unless they're dead, like, that's 100% correct. Like, hello, you did it. We're here. Nos hicimos, let's go.
100%, 100%. Okay, one final question for you before
Okay.
we wrap up. And that is,
Yes, I will come hang
what
out
is
with you in South Africa. Please give me a spare bed. That sounds amazing.
you're welcome. Come on over. I love it. So my final question is, what is your next level of healing? So what is it that you are coming up against and you are dealing with in the world? And
Ooh.
yeah, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I wanted to be famous because I wasn't receiving the type of it. I want to be so, my parents did give me attention, but it was not the type that I needed. I think is the nuance in the conversation. Like I adore and I love my parents deeply, and also because of their own history, there was a lacking of emotional maturity that was necessary for me growing up. I don't want to be famous anymore because I've given myself the attention that I was always seeking, right? And ironically, now that I don't want to be famous, I'm in this weird space where my name is starting to be brought up in spaces that I'm not in. And so, and like because of the work that I do, and I'm writing a book, and I just spoke at Harvard, and like all these things, people are starting to recognize me. So the next level of healing I'm dealing with is making sure I don't lose myself in this notoriety and making sure that I still take care of myself and value myself and stay true to myself and don't allow any seeds of neuroses to take over. Like I think ego checking is the biggest part of my journey because as you get validation, it can be really hard to smell your shit. And so making sure that I'm still able to receive constructive criticism from people while still recognizing when someone's giving me feedback and they're not doing so in good faith is definitely the next part of my journey. And also, it's funny when I was more quote unquote safe in America as a queer brown neurodivergent person, I was never really vocal about my identities because I was like, yeah, I'm this thing. And now that it's like a more direct problem, I'm like, yes, I am a brown neurodivergent non-binary person. Like I'm so much more vocal, which I think is also part of the quote unquote fame thing that's happening right now. Like she's blowing up on TikTok in a really weird way. Um, and I'm like, Yeah, this is kind of terrifying because I don't like parasocial relationships. Like I actively tell people like I'm not your friend. Like, hey, look, I'm your buddy. I'm your kuyate, which is my version. Like in my language, kuya means like big sibling, big brother, ate, auntie. So I'm like kuyate. I'm non-binary. Like I'm your kuyate. We ain't friends, honey. You're not help. You like you are not the person I call when I have issues, and that's okay. Like you can love what I have to say. And I know that people build parasocial relationships because they're so lonely. So again, balancing between showing up authentically, still being myself, also not becoming a parody of myself, which can also so often happen with fame, where like you just become this caricature in the public eye. And so I hope that answers the question. It's very different, I'm sure, than the responses you've gotten, but I'm also in a very weird part of my journey right now. That's all the things I wanted as a child that I no longer want as an adult is happening, and I have to really reconcile that.
I love that. I literally love that so much. And like I think it's really, really important for people to hear what people are dealing with like as you move along this journey. And I think like that understanding of like as you let go of the expectation, what is for you will find you. So like if this is the path, then this is the path, and you will do so with grace and it will be absolutely fine. But I do think like being really conscious of it and being really responsible in how you approach it. And that's for everything, whether you're, you know, becoming famous, whether you're starting a business, whether you're starting a family, like whatever the thing is that you're doing, it's that, you know, how do I come into this from a responsible place of healing rather than creating like more trauma and, you know, perpetuating the things that are already there. So I think like that is, it's a wonderful answer. It's like it's so, so wonderful. And this whole podcast has been so incredible. It's been so great talking to you and being able to just share your, you know, your thoughts and your journey. And as I said, like we could probably talk for literal days
I mean,
about healing.
obviously, you and I are going to have Zoom dates now, and I'm not saying that superficially. When I say that, I mean it. So we're gonna talk once the recording stops and figure that out, and it's gonna be
I
fabulous.
love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. It's absolutely amazing. As always, for everyone listening, we will have social details below, and you can get in touch and obviously reach out and all of the good things. But we'll wrap it up there. So thank you so much for
Thank you,
today.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of The Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Diary of Discovery.